On the 8th of September 2021, the What If Zombies episode of Marvel's What If show was released. In this episode, we were introduced to this universe's zombie outbreak, and how our heroes were coping with surviving in these new, unforeseen circumstances. It was an okay episode, more of your generic zombie apocalypse plot with some superheroes sprinkled in. Then, on the 12th of November that same year, we got the official announcement that a Marvel Zombies show was in development, following up on the teaser we had seen in the What If episode. The series aired 3 years later on the 24th of September 2025. Season 1 was made up of 4 episodes, all of which released simultaneously, and they were rough, to say the least. For clarity's sake, I'm reviewing this as the piece of media it was presented as. I have not read any of the Marvel Zombie comics, so I won't be basing any of my criticisms on those, because, well, I haven't read them, and to try and use that knowledge from a generic Google search would be disingenuous. In today's video, we will be going over this series episode by episode, and breaking down the world building and how it spins off from the MCU timeline previously established by the films, the characters, the stakes, and how none of this actually works when thinking about it for more than a few seconds. Grab your bowl of cereal that you're probably eating while watching this, maybe pour yourself a drink, get comfy in bed, and let us see how exactly Marvel Zombies fails at such a simple concept. Before we continue any further, did you know we have a Discord server? It's fairly small at the moment, but you can change that. And if you're feeling generous, you can support this channel further by becoming a member, with perks such as fun little badges next to your name when you comment, meaning I'm more likely to notice what you said. You'll also have early access to videos and member-only streams. We currently have 2 levels, but I'm hoping to expand on them further in the future. Okay, enough shilling from me, let's get back to it. As mentioned just a moment ago, this show branches off from the What If Zombies episode, which initially took place 2 weeks before the opening events of Infinity War. During the events of the Ant-Man and the Wasp film, we see Hank go subquantum to find his wife and Hope's mother, Janet, and bring her back from being trapped in the quantum realm. In this timeline, Hank still goes subquantum, but Janet got infected with some virus in the quantum realm. Janet bites Hank and the two return to our normal-sized realm to begin the outbreak. Keep the detail that Hank and Janet could pilot this thing back in the one piece tucked away for now, because we're going to circle back to it later. Also, keep in mind where in the established MCU timeline this branches off from, because it's going to be very important momentarily. Episode 1 opens with a group of survivors navigating the long-ruined New York City, 5 years after the initial outbreak. The group consists of Kamala Khan, Kate Bishop, and Riri Williams, and the AI Friday. I'm quite curious to know how exactly these 3 girls came to find each other, more so, how they have the tech and abilities they currently have in their possession. Kamala is from New Jersey, Kate is from New York, and Riri was in Massachusetts studying at MIT. Is what I would say if that didn't go completely against the timeline. We know Riri didn't graduate high school until 2020, thanks to this article we see in Ironheart, and the outbreak occurred 2 years earlier in 2018. So Riri should have been in Chicago when this all kicked off, and most definitely would not have had the means or tools to build her makeshift battlesuit we see her wearing in this show. Not only that, but Kamala shouldn't even have her bangle here. We know she doesn't get it until the start of the Ms. Marvel series, which takes place in-universe in 2025. So already the plot is completely screwed, because Kamala needs the bangle in order to get targeted by Wanda and later be a channel for her to restart the world. So we're off to a very rocky start, and we're only a few seconds into the show. The girls watch as a Quinjet comes crashing down from the sky, and they quickly make their way over to salvage it because...
if we heard it, he did too.
The he being Zombie Hawkeye. Inside the crashed Quinjet, Riri scans the dead pilot and notices there's something in his stomach, which Kamala ends up drawing the short end of the stick and having to remove what turns out to be a shrunken MacGuffin device from the corpse's stomach. So our group happened to be wandering around in this specific part of New York at this specific time to see the Quinjet crash, which flew from DC. Granted, there's no official confirmation as to where the Quinjet flew from, as later in this episode, when the group is discussing the transmitter, they say the base was overrun, but never where the base was located. On one side of the monitor, it says DC, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was Washington, DC, so take that speculation as you will. I am curious how Friday or Riri's tech still works, as we were later shown they have several satellite dishes and full electricity in a mansion. But how is that possible given the world has stopped? We don't see a generator anywhere. So Friday should have ran out of juice by now, and so too should have Riri's gear. You can't have this many satellite dishes running at once on top of charging a full-on Iron Man suit and not draw any unwanted attention with a loud generator, or fully working power plant. And I doubt the latter is even possible anymore. The shield base the widows use I could buy because it's a government facility. It most certainly has backup generators at the very least. But 3 girls and an energy-using AI-powered suit in the middle of the woods? Very unlikely. But I forgot Riri's here, so everything is automatically going to work out.
Model 36XT.
God, you're good.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen, who is...
For now.
Riri, please! No! Please, Friday, take me back!
One jump scare later, the girls acquire the MacGuffin device for this series. I do like how this device being swallowed and the girls' lack of caution nearly got Kamala bitten. The device itself being swallowed was dumb enough already, but the girls not being more cautious towards a clearly dead zombified person in a zombie apocalypse was just such an egregious oversight on their part. They've survived this long enough to know a zombie Avenger will be heading their way, yet they're still having all this banter and wasting time playing rock, paper, scissors instead of getting the job done and bouncing. Also, the zombie 100% should have been Kamala, but for some reason it doesn't extend its arms at all to grab and pull her in. How convenient. Zombie Hawkeye attacks the girls all by himself because apparently all the other zombies are gone.
Anybody else concerned about the lack of zombies here?
Predators tend to move on when the food does.
Not sure why he was an exemption here, because by the rules established in that line, Hawkeye should have followed the Horde to wherever the next buffet was. But he didn't, so that this action scene could happen. Friday gets damaged, the only damage being the teddy bear head stuck onto the suit exploding, but the rest still intact. Not sure how one small explosive arrow managed to immobilize the Mark 50 completely, but I digress. As the girls retreat with the incapacitated Friday, Kate nabs one of Hawkeye's trick arrows from the shot he takes. Keep an eye on this, because it'll become relevant again later. Once the girls are back at the safe house, Riri reveals that this device is an interstellar communications device, shrunk by PIM particles. 2 things. 1. How does Riri know what a PIM particle is? She, nor any of the characters here, except maybe Friday, would know what this shrinking tech was. Not to mention that S.H.I.E.L.D. having and using this shrinking tech also doesn't make sense. The entire opening of the first Ant-Man film explains exactly why S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't have this tech, because Hank would rather die than give it to them, and they never got their hands on it at this point in the timeline because Endgame never happened. Friday you could maybe argue for, since Tony would know what it is thanks to his father knowing about the tech, since Hank broke his nose. But again, Riri explains this, not Friday. And given that both the lab was destroyed during the outbreak and Hank, Hope, and Janet are all infected, Scott obviously has no idea how to make more of this, so the tech died with Hank the moment he was bitten. This outbreak could have easily been contained early on by Earth's mightiest heroes, but for some stupid reason, they landed their ship in the middle of the Horde on a bridge with no clear plan of action, getting easily overwhelmed because they willingly surrounded themselves like idiots, and, subsequently, doomed the rest of the world the moment they fell. S.H.I.E.L.D. also just shouldn't exist at this point in the timeline. S.H.I.E.L.D. went under in 2014 after the events of Captain America the Winter Soldier. This series takes place 9 years later, yet the S.H.I.E.L.D. network is still active, and S.H.I.E.L.D. was still big enough of a powerhouse to have had the resources to work on a solution to the virus, which is impossible given where we are in the timeline. During the exposition scene about the MacGuffin, Kamala waves around a spoonful of tomato soup, the same soup from the can they scavenged earlier while in New York. You guys are in an apocalypse and we're ecstatic to find such a delicacy given the circumstances. Why on God's green earth are you just so carelessly wasting food? If you want the audience to immerse themselves into the world you're setting your story in, then you need to commit. If you want to tell a darker story using these characters, then go for it. But you need to commit. Don't damage the world and characters over a line of dialogue that wasn't funny to begin with. Christ, we're less than 10 minutes into the episode, and there are already so many issues. Cut back to the crashed Quinjet where the zombie horde, led by Okoye, finds the pilot. Hawkeye strides in, and we get our first mention of the Queen of the Dead, Wanda Maximoff. Okoye channels Wanda's brain magic to make Hawkeye one of Wanda's scions. I did a bit of digging on what exactly a scion would be in this context, and from what I can tell, they are elite, formidable members of the undead horde directly serving the Queen of the Dead, distinguished by their red glowing eyes. So does that mean these random red-eyed zombies are also scions? Or are they just Wanda zombies, and it's only the named zombies who get the fancy title? But even then, there's a handful of named zombies who were never initially or still aren't under Wanda's control. I don't know how any of this works, because the show never makes the distinction clear, other than red eyes mean directly controlled by Wanda, no red eyes means normal zombies. But then some red-eyed zombies like Okoye can talk and give orders, while others like Cap only make generic zombie noises. And then there's Wanda, who is just Wanda but with rotten flesh sometimes? I actually can't figure out why zombie Wanda acts exactly like her pre-infected self. We know she wasn't always this sentient because in the What If episode, she behaves like a regular zombie who just happens to have magic powers. No words or intelligence anywhere to be seen. But then in this show, suddenly she's fully sentient and commanding hordes. I've seen some claim it was because of the death of Vision, a similar grief to what she experienced in WandaVision, to which I ask, where are you getting that? She never once mentions Vision in the show, nor expresses any desire to bring him back or be in any form of grieving. I'll get more into that in the section talking about the show overall later on, but Wanda's plan doesn't make a lick of sense. It is essentially the Westview Hex all over again, but this time it's the entire world, and Wanda needs Kamala's bangle for some reason. Again, we'll go more in depth on that later, but I want you to keep that in mind as we watch Wanda's pursuit of Kamala play out across these 4 episodes. Going back to the girls, they make their way through this massive valley that appeared seemingly from nowhere. Insert action scene, and suddenly, wow, Icarus! But he's badly damaged. Who could have done that? Captain Marvel? Zombie Captain Marvel? How in the ever-loving fuck did she get infected? There's this big problem with power levels and consistency throughout the show. Captain Marvel is one of the strongest MCU characters, period. Yet she somehow managed to get infected and is stuck in an endless battle with Icarus, which shouldn't be possible because Icarus should have lost long ago. Later, we see that being bitten starts the infection almost immediately, and it spreads like wildfire across your body. Yet, Alexei gets bitten by Cap not once, but twice during their brawl, and he doesn't get infected. Skin of steel, I guess? But then, how did Cap get infected if Alexei can easily manage 2 bites, and he is essentially a Captain America knockoff? He even eats zombie flesh later on and does get infected from that, but it takes ages, whereas the Asgardians, who ate the same zombie flesh, got turned instantly, and they are objectively way stronger than Alexei because they are essentially gods amongst men. And then comes Infinity Hulk, who, despite having the energy of all 6 Infinity Stones coursing through his body, manages to get quickly overwhelmed by random zombies and a few shots from generic Asgardian ships. Again, we'll get more into that later, but these inconsistencies keep cropping up throughout the show, and it really bugs me from a basic writing perspective, because you'd have to be actively choosing to ignore continuity to have these things play out the way they do in this story. There are numerous times during the girls' time in the Valley of the Broken Gods when Icarus puts them in direct danger of being killed. The primary reason for the Eternals' existence is to act as guardians sent by the Celestials to Earth to protect humanity from any and all deviants. However, they also have a hidden, more purposeful objective: to foster human civilization, ensuring population growth and technological advancement to provide enough energy for the birth of a new Celestial from within the Earth's core. Kinda hard to do it if all of humanity is dead, including these 3 girls you keep nearly killing with your fight against Captain Marvel, right, buddy? You also let an entire horde of zombies sneak right up on the girls. Out here doing God's work, ain't ya? As the girls are passing through the valley, their truck gets hit and is sent flying. Kamala uses her powers to shield the girls. Hey, hang on a minute, why didn't she shield the whole truck? Why only the inside?
Good question.
Also, the girls should be way more injured from the crash because Kamala's interior shield doesn't stop physics from working as intended. But no, they walk away from the crash unscathed. Insert a random zombie horde that has no business being here, and Riri gets bitten.
Hell yeah!
Oh, wait, nope, she has a cure. She has a cure?! You mean to tell me she's had a cure this entire time and never once thought to use it on anyone? I understand she has a line of dialogue saying that it hadn't been tested yet.
Oh, this is not how I wanted to test this!
But there's a problem with that too. So Riri packed an untested piece of equipment for this journey to save the world from a long, active apocalypse, and decided to test it in the middle of a horde? Riri, I thought you were supposed to be smart.
God, you're good.
Will you shut the hell up?
We know for a fact she had this tech already because there isn't a single scene where she's developing it, so why the hell didn't she test it prior to leaving? Why wait this long to test it? If she had tested it on any regular zombie and cured the infection, as we are shown that it does when she was bitten, then this whole zombie apocalypse is over. Day saved and no one needs to travel to Ohio on a noble quest. But no, she tests it here and cures herself of the infection with no current means to recreate the antidote, nor does this ever become relevant again for the rest of the season. Even after Riri is confirmed to have survived this encounter, somehow, Kate shoots the trick arrow at Captain Marvel and it turns out to have been a confetti arrow. A bloody confetti arrow.
Fuck you.
Not only is this stupid, but it makes Hawkeye look like a complete moron. So, Hawkeye, this masterful user of archery, went to a potential combat zone with a fucking confetti arrow in his arsenal? Why does this specific type of trick arrow exist? All for a lame excuse to get Kate killed when you could have had the same effect with any old regular arrow, and just show Kate shocked it didn't kill Captain Marvel, then boom, she gets eviscerated. Same outcome, different, more realistic avenue to achieve the desired effect. But no. Let's not only make Hawkeye, but Kate look stupid with a single moment. Well done, Zeb Wells, you complete and utter buffoon. Why is it so hard to write competent characters and grounded stakes within respective stories nowadays? Why must every character be made into a fucking idiot just to get a certain plot thread to happen? Why is it consistently happening with Disney? They reduced Obi-Wan to a sniveling loser in his own show, they butchered Luke Skywalker, completely ruined Anakin's redemption, made Boba Fett look like a toddler in a sandbox, made most of their new villains into stereotypical woe is me archetypes, undid the impact of Steve and Tony's respective endings, and for what? Horrible box office returns, mass subscription cancellations, propping up Gal Gadot for your shitty Snow White remake? Fuck off! Ugh. Sorry, that was a lot. Most of that was amped up for the sake of entertainment, but the anger felt there was real. It was very real as I wrote that segment of the script, just as it was when I delivered it. Okay, I think I'm good now. Let's get back to it. Where were we? Ah, yes, Kamala being flown away by Friday after Kate died and Riri was left surrounded by the Horde. Friday goes back to save Riri, despite her having ordered Friday to get Kamala to safety, which leaves Kamala running on foot and nearly dying several times from Icarus and Captain Marvel's fight. Great job there, Friday! As Kamala passes out from being knocked off her feet, a mysterious person on a motorcycle swoops in and nabs her. Kamala wakes up by a fire and turns to see none other than Blade! Home Slice was the mysterious person on the bike who rescued her. I love Blade in this show. He's just aura farming left, right, and center, and I love every second of it. He does, however, deliver some very clunky exposition to explain the Valley of the Broken Gods, the place he rescued Kamala from, and confirms that Riri and Kate are dead.
Kate, Riri, please take me back. I need my help.
Your friends are gone. You should be too.
He offers to help Kamala reach Ohio, and then they have a cute little road trip montage where we see some fun chemistry between the two play out.
So you're like half god? My bangle's magic.
Cool.
They eventually arrive at a shield base, which has now become the home to the Black Widows. Blocking the path into the base is a horde of zombies, but turns out they're under the Widow's control due to the mind control stuff introduced in the Black Widow film. Not sure how this works on the zombies, given the Widows needed to be injected with a special serum. So unless they had the resources to replicate and inject the serum into every single one of these zombies, this shouldn't work. We see later that Milena presses a few buttons and takes control of the Wanda-controlled zombies momentarily, but they most definitely weren't injected with any serum, so again, how does this work? There's a bit of rough animation from Kamala and Alexei while we get exposited at regarding the device's origin. Again, they talk about the Pym particles like it's common knowledge, which it isn't. Suddenly, Wanda zombies. Alexei gives a rousing speech and the battle begins. Widows versus zombies, zombies versus zombies, and Alexei versus Zombie Cap. And then this happens.
Fighting is cheap!
How? How is he not infected? He doesn't even react other than mild inconvenience. I'm supposed to believe that Alexei can be bitten twice, be completely unaffected, and then, after he eats zombie flesh later, it takes ages for him to turn, yet Captain Marvel, who has far superior durability than Alexei, managed to get infected ages ago? I question how Cap is still able to function despite missing his entire lower half, but I'm going to chalk that up to Wanda's magic shenanigans. I say that, though, as if we don't have a contradictory example later on of zombie Hawkeye dying immediately after being sliced in half during the season finale. And he was also under Wanda's direct control. So who knows how any of this works? There's a moment where a Cap rolls around behind his shield, Alexei shooting at him the entire time, but then when the shield falls to the floor, Cap somehow gets onto the ceiling to surprise Alexei. I love it when characters randomly decide to bend reality for the sake of a fight scene. The group retreats as the base is overrun, and we get a pointless self-sacrifice from Milena. Literally, there was no point in her staying behind when it made no difference other than some zombie aura farming. Zombie Ghost sneaks up on the group, but is stopped by Blade. And she has a reaction to being stabbed in the stomach despite being a zombie. Not exactly sure how that works, but okay. And that's only episode 1. Christ, we're gonna be here for a while. Trigger warning. This episode contains Aquafina. Viewer discretion is advised.
Remember the swamp? Remember my song in the swamp when I was like, whap, chicka, whap, whap, chicka, whap.
Episode 2 opens on an impressive one-take sequence. Something a lot of people seem to forget when it comes to one-take sequences in animation is just how much work goes into it. Don't get me wrong, one-take sequences in live-action films are also very impressive, but with animation there's a little bit more of a flex there because of how much is going on at once that had to be animated, rendered, and then ensured it was all running properly. It's good stuff. The industry really needs to be paying its VFX workers and animators more. A brave statement, I know, but it's true. We wouldn't get to see half the impressive shit we do nowadays if it weren't for them. So, Hollywood, cough up. There is a moment, however, that stuck out to me like a sore thumb during this one-take sequence. This fella riding a motorcycle up a ramp and straight into a window. It just looks really goofy and completely ruined the immersion of the sequence for me. Jimmy Woo, my beloved, is also here. Suddenly, the 10 rings appear. Not sure how they knew to come to this exact place specifically, but okay. Shang-Chi gets bitten, and his dad, Zhu Wenwu, sacrifices all 10 of his rings to stop Shang-Chi from being fully infected, resulting in his death as Shang-Chi and the others escape. Hey Wenwu, you didn't need to give away all 10 of your rings. We literally see later that Shang-Chi gives half the rings to Aquafina without consequence, so you didn't need to sacrifice yourself. The rate of the infection spreading at the moment Shang-Chi's bitten makes Alexei's lack of infection from 2 bites in the previous episode even more absurd. Also, Shang-Chi having an infected arm never comes into play in any major way again, except for one line of dialogue with Alexei, but that's it. It never gets brought up again. When jumping to the crew in current day, we see them listening to a radio channel. But I thought all communications in and out of the atmosphere were impossible due to the fallout of the Wakanda event.
We can't. Fallout from the Wakanda event scatters signals in our atmosphere. No radio waves get out or make it in.
And I'm not sure the writers understand that satellites orbit pretty high, being primarily located in the thermosphere and exosphere, so they shouldn't work given the rules episode 1 established. Suddenly scrolls. Deborah Wilson, my beloved, phenomenal actor. They completely waste her talents in this show. The group eventually arrives at a harbor with their tribute in the form of cows, and we get introduced to this world's version of Zemo, and his voice sounds interesting.
Everyone, look! There are heroes among us.
His right hand is John Walker, who acts nothing like his mainline counterpart, going more for a sort of Zemo fanboy. Reminds me of another character who used to be serious but got completely changed into a fanboy archetype. Once everyone is on board the raft, the two groups overlap and they discuss the MacGuffin device. Turns out Shang-Chi and Aquafina also know about Pym particles. How is this common knowledge? We then get a sneak peek at zombie Namor and his Atlantic zombie army, which begs the question of how the hell did any of these characters get infected? As far as we're shown, there are no other water-based infected, so how on earth did the entirety of Atlantis get infected? I have another question. How can Aquafina use the 10 rings? As far as I can tell, the 10 rings require a high level of martial arts skill, physical conditioning, and potential mental fortitude to activate and control, and we never once see her character demonstrate any of these traits. When the Atlanteans start breaking into the raft, they make it look so easy, as if they were just tearing through paper. Keep in mind, the raft was made to contain the most powerful individuals, yet the outside walls can be broken through easily by regular zombies. But then, somehow the Hulk containment cell takes a hot second for Namor to break through. As the raft begins evacuations, we see everyone else getting into escape pods very quickly, yet Zemo has to travel further to get to his own private life pod. Why is that? Seems like a major design flaw, and evidently works against the characters because Yelena dies as a result. During the sequence where Namor slaughters all the non-main characters of the group, there's this weird slow-mo effect applied for John's death. Like, look at this.
Back off! Back off!
It's artificially slowed down, and they never reuse this effect for any other deaths, so it just sticks out like a sore thumb to me. Kamala embiggens Namor's head, and the remaining members of the group make it to the life pod, all save for Yelena. Yelena sacrifices herself to launch the pod, which was very sad and all, but completely unnecessary. We see the group get to the life pod room from this long, singular corridor while being pursued solely by Namor. Yelena goes down a ladder from the life pod room to access the backup controls. After Namor's death, the group gets into the life pod and is sealed in by Yelena. When we cut to Yelena's perspective, suddenly there's a massive cluster of zombies outside the door. But where did they come from? How did they get there? The only way into the room was the ladder, so where did that disappear to? She also says to Alexei there's no time for her to get back to him. But they chat for quite a hot second before the pod even launches, so there definitely was time for her to get back to the group. One sad self-sacrifice scene later, the pod launches and the group escapes the raft. They plan on going to New Asgard to find a way to break through the atmosphere to send the distress signal to the Nova Corps. But how do any of these characters, aside from Blade, know about New Asgard's existence? Blade wasn't even the one to bring this up, so how does anyone else know where to go or what resources New Asgard would have access to?
Take us to New Asgard. What?
Why does this keep happening? Episode 3 opens with a flashback, picking up from where the What If episode ended with Peter, Scott, and T'Challa arriving in Wakanda, where zombie Thanos awaits. This entire sequence is narrated by Peter due to T'Challa not being voiced due to the unfortunate passing of Chadwick Boseman. I understand wanting to respect the legacy of a character an actor was closely associated with, but the narration being the only dialogue during this sequence feels so odd. I generally don't understand why Disney is so scared of recasting T'Challa. To me, it ironically feels quite disrespectful, essentially saying no one else is good enough to portray T'Challa. It's not like characters haven't been recast in the MCU before. Look at Rhodey. Hell, look at Ross. Harrison Ford replaced William Hurt in portraying the character after Hurt's unfortunate passing. So why wasn't the same respect given to Ross's character as they did with T'Challa? It just feels off. How did zombie Thanos get infected? He has 5 of the 6 Infinity Stones, and I'm supposed to believe some regular-ass zombie got to him? We know for a fact that there are no hero zombies in Wakanda because they don't show up once during this entire sequence. So a regular zombie managed to get close enough to infect Thanos. Bullshit. Thanos managed to get all the other stones by the time he arrived in Wakanda. But that can't be the case because we saw zombie Doctor Strange had the Time Stone still around his neck in the What If episode when Bruce returned to Earth. Thanos got the Space Stone from Loki, the Soul Stone from Vormir, the Reality Stone from the Collector, and the Power Stone from Xandar. But he can't have the Power Stone because we know for a fact that the Nova Corps are still intact because they have an entire fleet blockading Earth. We see zombie Thanos learning how to control the stones even further than he already knew how to. So why didn't he undo his own infection? Wanda, whose powers come from the Mind Stone, can bend reality to essentially undo her own infection, which I have issues with, but we'll get more into that later. So why doesn't Thanos do that with the Reality Stone? Suddenly Thor. Thanos incinerates Rocket and Groot while severely wounding Thor. T'Challa then sacrifices himself to stop Thanos by throwing himself into Thanos and sending them both plummeting into Wakanda's vibranium core. Not sure why the core was strong enough to utterly eviscerate the stones and cause the fallout energy it does, but okay. Scott and Peter escape through a portal, and we cut back to current day. Speaking of Scott, how is he not already fully zombified? We see the infection quickly spreads upon being bitten, so he never should have been able to be saved by amputating his head by the time we encounter him in What If, given that he was the first person to be bitten upon Hank and Janet returning from the Quantum Realm. Our group arrives at New Asgard and is explicitly told no mortals are welcome.
This is a refuge for gods, not mortals.
But thanks to Khonshu, they are allowed entry. I'm not sure how the Asgardians know who Khonshu is, nor vice versa, but sure, let's roll with it. Surprise! Wanda's here. Wait, but how is she allowed in? We were just told no mortals can enter, yet Wanda is here, and she is very much a mortal no matter how powerful she is. Plot twist, the feast Wanda brought with her was an illusion to feed the Asgardians zombie flesh to get them all infected. If I had a nickel for every time the MCU tried to make Wanda a believable villain, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. So a big question about Wanda being here is, how does she retain this much sentience? As mentioned before, she didn't display any form of sentience in the What If episode, and this show takes place shortly after that episode. So, what changed? How exactly did this come to be? Wanda tells Kamala she used her own powers to undo the effect of the infection, but that clearly was a method of deception to try to get Kamala to trust her. Also, Blade is an inconsistent moron here. Why didn't he alert the group to the zombie flesh illusion or that Wanda was here to begin with? He says Khonshu didn't tell him everything, but he told them prior to entering not to touch anything, implying he knew something, and even knocked food out of Jimmy's hand, so he 100% knew the food was bad, but didn't say anything to anyone.
You're welcome. And don't touch anything.
Food!
Ow! Hey, no heads up on the zombie food.
Khonshu doesn't tell me everything.
So Alexi's blood is solely on his hands. Speaking of Alexei, why did it take so long for him to be infected? Especially with his own admission of how much he ate and all the prior examples of how quickly you get infected from a single bite. Yet he got bitten twice and ate tons of zombie flesh, yet it takes forever for him to even start feeling the effects. R.I.P. the GOAT, Jimmy Woo. The group follows Valkyrie deeper into New Asgard to escape on a single ship parked in the center of a massive hangar. Thor decides to lock in and comes to save the group from zombie Alexei, because he finally decided to be infected, only to get his ass kicked a minute later. They nerfed my boy so badly in the patch notes. Little nitpick, but Thor's lip sync with his grunts etc. during the fight with Wanda is way off. It doesn't even match his expressions half the time. Our group escapes with Valkyrie in her ship and breaks orbit to send the distress signal. They send the signal after Valkyrie tells Kamala to push the yellow button, but we can see 3 yellow buttons on the console, and she has to ask 3 separate times which yellow button to push. Not only is this another example of MCU humor leaking to a scene that it doesn't need to be present for, but it could have easily been avoided had Valkyrie started with, push the yellow button that's second from the top on the left side of the panel. I know this is 100% a nitpick, but when they keep adding up, it just really annoys me. Plot twist, the Nova Corps were already here and aren't letting anyone leave Earth because it's quarantined. So if the Nova Corps aren't letting anyone leave Earth because they're fully aware of the infection, why don't they just glass the planet or make a cure? It can't be hard to make one since a regular human like Riri whipped one together with scavenged parts during an apocalypse, so it can't be difficult for an advanced civilization with superior tech like the Nova Corps to make one. It's a waste of manpower and resources to have an entire blockade around Earth instead of easily solving the problem. The previous episode ended with the Nova Corps ordering the ship to turn around, and then, after a bit, beginning a 10-second countdown. Episode 4 opens with the countdown having been completed and the group not complying, so they pursued the ship to disinfect it, aka blow it up. Wouldn't chasing the ship leave a hole in the blockade? Why don't the heroes take this opportunity to break through and escape? They even complain about the Nova Corps not asking them to turn around when they were given quite a generous amount of time to flee. But no, gotta have an action scene because the audience might be getting bored. Kamala uses her powers to shield the inside of the ship. Just block the entire thing! What's the point of only shielding the inside and falling to your presumable death since physics is still a thing? But apparently that isn't a thing because you emerged from a pretty bad car accident unscathed. So I'm sure you can walk this one off. A magic portal appears and the group is saved, landing at Carmitage instead of becoming street meat. Kamala gets excited when meeting Peter and Scott. Hey, hang on a minute. How does she know who these two are? Peter wasn't well known until after Endgame, and Scott most certainly was not known at all before any of this. So how does she know he's Ant-Man or even who he is, or that Peter Parker is Spider-Man? Whatever. Let's just cut to an action scene instead. I'm sure that'll fix everything. We cut to Wanda and her zombie army encroaching on Infinity Hulk so she can take his powers for whatever poorly defined reason. She has her zombie Asgardians open fire with their ship's cannons, and hang on, where did these come from? There wasn't a single other ship in that hangar bay, and these kind of ships would have been destroyed on Asgard at the end of Ragnarok. So how are they even here? Infinity Hulk destroys the ships, forcing Wanda to send in the Horde, which somehow manages to overwhelm Infinity Hulk, despite him showing that he can easily annihilate the zombies in waves. Like, seriously, if the power of the stones could severely harm Thor, a god, then how can an army of Asgardians and regular zombies, who are way less powerful than Thor, be a solution to beat the Infinity Hulk? We see that Thanos, with the same powers, beat Wanda in Infinity War, and the virus doesn't make you stronger. Plus, we're shown Infinity Hulk's insane power levels with punches alone, and are supposed to believe he got overwhelmed? And why punching? He basically uses the Force to send zombies flying only seconds ago, so why does he swap to hand-to-hand combat when that would only put him at further risk? Thanos managed to utilize the power of the stones better with a gauntlet in one hand than Infinity Hulk does with the energy of all 6 stones coursing through his entire body. They had to nerf him immediately after showing off his powers for Wanda to even stand a chance at winning here. Speaking of the Hulk, how is he even here right now? Infinity War never happened, so Hulk and Banner resolving their differences off-screen hasn't happened yet because Thanos never succeeded. Once our heroes arrive to protect Hulk, they all just start screaming for a few seconds while just standing there. Guys, you usually issue a battle cry once you actually start charging, not when you're standing still for several seconds. I love this one particular frame. It just looks goofy as fuck. I love how Scott manages to do anything useful in this finale because he's literally just a floating head in a fragile Futurama jar. The main objective for our heroes in this finale is to protect Hulk so he can heal, but for some reason it takes him longer to heal once everyone shows up than it did before when he was alone. This is obviously a lazy excuse from the writers so Wanda can have a chance at winning. There's a moment during the finale where Valkyrie goes inside Zombie Hope's arm and cuts through her insides to defeat her, mirroring what Hope did in the What If episode. Yet somehow Valkyrie doesn't get infected doing this, even though this method was exactly how Hope got infected to begin with. The rules of how one gets infected continue to become even more confusing in this finale because Kamala gets confronted by her previously dead, now infected friends, despite them not being bitten. So, can just anyone come back as a zombie? We see tons of deaths in this show that don't result in reanimation because, well, they died from means other than infection. Even Thor got infected and managed to hold his own, without axe or hammer mind you, against Infinity Hulk. We literally see Thor get his ass handed to him by Thanos with 5 of the 6 Infinity Stones once he loses the axe. So there's no way an undead, axeless version of him holds his own against a Hulk with the energy of all 6 stones powering his every move. Wanda then gets close to Hulk, who decides to just stand there and not stop her from draining him of his powers, because plot, I guess. Awkwafina gives a really poorly delivered no. No! Forcing Kamala to pull Star-Lord and sacrifice the win because my friends died. Wanda utilizes her powers, the energy of the Infinity Hulk, and Kamala's bangle to unleash an explosion which consumes the world, and maybe beyond? It's really not clear if this only affected Earth or spread to the whole universe. Kamala wakes up, realizing this was all just a bad dream, and goes out for Boba with a very much alive Kate and Riri. Just kidding, it was all in the head! Turns out Riri is alive, despite Blade confirming otherwise, and she has hacked Wanda's signal. What signal? A magic signal? How can you hack a magic signal? Wanda didn't use any technology, so how is this reveal even possible? Insert cliffhanger and cut to black. So that was shit. I don't even know where to begin. There's so much timeline fuckery across this whole show. Characters being where they shouldn't be, knowing certain bits of information that just aren't common knowledge, or organizations still existing by the time of Infinity War. It's just a colossal mess across the board. Zombie intelligence also doesn't make a lick of sense. We have most zombies being mindless drones, but then some can speak and command others, and then there's just Zombie Wanda having a category of mindfuckery of her own. There's a lot of weak dialogue and clunky exposition in this show, with even more standard MCU humor leaking into scenes, completely clashing with the overall tone. We still don't know what Wanda's endgame was, nor why Kamala was such a key part in it. The world looks the same as the apocalypse once Wanda fixes everything. So what was the change? Is everyone seeing the illusion Kamala saw at the end? Clearly not, because Riri was trying to break Kamala free of it. So why only Kamala? And, as of me writing this script, Season 2 is yet to be greenlit, so we probably aren't ever going to get answers to any of these questions. Which sucks. Bit of a nitpick, but Clint's arrow count kept changing from the What If episode to this show. He had 9 spare arrows when emerging from the shadows and fired 3 during the whole subway fight, meaning he is left with 7 at the end of the What If episode. We saw in the scene where the Avengers get infected that Clint started with 8 arrows, firing 4 before being infected, meaning his zombie self should have had 4 by the time he appears in the subway. And that's not even touching on the number of times the arrow count changes throughout this series whenever he appears. There's a massive continuity error during the opening sequence of episode 2. Jimmy Woo fires 19 shots before the gang is rescued by the 10 Rings. Problem is, all FBI agents in the San Francisco division are equipped with the standard 9mm Glock 19Ms, which only holds 15 rounds. And we never see Jimmy reload once.
Look out! We're evacuating the area, let's go, let's go!
You can fight?
Got to get these people out of here! Everyone on board! Run!
I do think Kamala is a bit of a Mary Sue in this series. Now, hang on, I know that statement is extremely loaded given all the controversies around that topic, but let me explain my terms and the definition I'm working with, because it's probably not what you're expecting. The term Mary Sue originated from Paula Smith's 1973 Star Trek parody, A Trekkie's Tale. The character Mary Sue was written to satirize the type of idolized female characters that were widespread in the Star Trek fandom at the time. These were often depicted as beautiful young women possessing special abilities or physical traits, universally beloved by the more established characters and playing a central role in the story. Most modern-day versions of Mary Sue's are depicted as being free of weakness or without any character flaws, which goes against the original Mary Sue. Mary Sue did have flaws and did fail, particularly when she got herself and everyone captured by the green androids. Sure, she does immediately free everyone, but she still temporarily failed, whereas most modern examples get everything correct right off the bat. Which is a shame that the definition has been so twisted, because a Mary Sue or Gary Stu is just essentially a character who is universally liked by everyone they've ever met. Everyone loves Kamala as soon as they meet her, except for Zemo, but he hates everyone, so that isn't out of place for him not to like her. It just gets really tiring when there's no conflict within the group of heroes and everyone just gets along like life is so peachy. No differing views on how to handle things, no contrasting beliefs, no nothing. Only good vibes allowed in the MCU. This show was such a disappointment to me. It had the potential to be this really dark and gruesome project in a world where everything MCU related is bright and bubbly and full of one-liners that could give Leon Kennedy a run for his money.
Or we can begin your treatment. Silent treatment, I hope.
I wanted to like this show, I really did, but there's just so much wrong with it that I can't let it slide. If Season 2 ever gets greenlit, I hope they do some serious damage control and fully dedicate themselves to the tone of this show. It's still possible to turn this thing around, but it's going to take a bit of hard work and proper dedication. I guess we'll see if that ever comes to pass. That's all from me today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and remember, I know what you did the other night, you sick fuck. Stay frosty.